Comenius, the elements, part 2, air. Janua linguarum reserata de meteoris, peri ton meteoron. Orbis sensualium pictus, nubes, meteora, et orbis pictus, aura, aer. Janua de meteoris, peri ton meteoron. Vapores aequosi perpetuo sursum feruntur. Hae atmides hudatodes anno ae perontae. Ex his densatis fit nubes, aut si haec deorsum labetur, nebula. Tuton pyknoteson synepe, tut esti nepelae ginontae, cato de enecteson omicle ginetae. And notice that clouds are given Latin names that describe their characteristics: cirrus, cumulus, stratus, and nimbus. Inde pluit, ninget, grandenat, cae diaetian tauten hue, nepe, calasdo bole. Pluia destillat lente, imber dense, nimbus impetuose. Ho huetos erema, ombros pyknoteron stalasde, laelaps et tupos cat aegidodes cae ragdaios estin. Haec pluia, si inter decidendum vel delabendum gelascit, fit grando, si incalescit nimium, uredo seo rubigo. Huetos, en toi catapipten apopegnumenos e pepegos calasda, pirumenos despodra erusibe cae cautmos legetae. Pruina est congelatus ros, styria stilla rigens. Pacne, herse et rosos pagetodes, stalagmos, stagones et hudatides pagesae, stagma pecton. Nues ex gutulis spumescentibus concretae segetem operiunt, negelu vel glacie algeat. Cion pacnotesa stagonon aprodon tus agrus stege, tu carpon hypo crueoste cae pagetu me luminestae, tu carpon diato cruoste cae ton pageton me rigun, me psucestae. Orbis pictus, nubes, meteora. Ex aqua sursum fertur, vel ascendit vapor. Ex vapore fit nubes, et propeteram nebula. Ec tu hudatos anno peritae e anabaene e atmis. Ec tes atmidos ginetae e nepele, cae angustes ges omicle. Ex nube stillat gutatem pluia et imber, quae congelata grando, semigelata nix, calefacta rubigo dicetur. Ec tes nepeles stalasde erema catastagonas ho huetos cae ho ombros, hos apopegnumenos kalasda, hemipeg numenos chion, pyrumenos kauthmos erusive legetae. In pluviosa nube soli opposita iris apparet, en huetode nepele toi helioi antichemene iris paenetae. In aquam cadens gutta bullam facet, multae bullae faciunt spumam. Esto hudor pipton tostagma pompoluga poie, polae pompolugas poi usiton apron. Ex aqua congelata fit glacies, ros congelatus ruina dicetur. Ex hudatos apopegnumenu ginetae crystallos, drossos eherse pagetodes pacne legetae. Ex sulpureo vapore fit tonetrus, qui e nube erumpens cum fulgere fulmineque tonat et fulminat. Ec theodus apopno es ginetae hebronte, ec tes nepeles ex ormosa met astrapes te cae cerau nu brontae cae cerau noe. Fulgor, astrape, is the lightning flash seen in the sky. Fulmen, keraunos, the lightning stroke or thunderbolt that descends to earth and strikes terrestrial objects. Which comes first, the thunder or the lightning? Janua resumed, res de meteoris repetita, hologos periton meteoron ep analeptes. By the way, what is ta meteora, from which this topic of the Janua gets its name? Meteoros, meteoron, is constructed from meta plus the verb aera, to lift, to raise. So the base meaning of meteoros is raised from off the ground. Ta meteora, in the plural, means things in the heaven above, astronomical phenomena. According to Socrates, in Plato's Apology, his enemies maligned him as being a ta meteora prontistes, a theorizer about things in the heavens, an airhead, as we might say. Ta meteorologica is the study of meteorology and is the title of Aristotle's treatise on the same. In Comenius, The Beginnings, we saw in our introduction to the constellations that Ptolemy's Almagest was propagated through Europe in the Middle Ages via a translation into Latin by Gerard of Cremona of a 9th century Arabic version. Gerard did the same for Aristotle's Ta Meteorologica, again translating into Latin from an Arabic version. Aura cum spirat focelat nos, et gelata regelat. Ventus vehemens et impetuosus cum flat, quatet, prosternet et proteret quoquo se vertet. Aura pneusa cae hemas talpusa ta pepacnomena dialue, cataigis elaelaps hopoian pneusa trepoito hapanta catabale, anatrepe, cae edapisde. Venti cardinales sunt subsolanus, orientalis, auster, meridionalis, Favonius sive Zephyrus occidentalis, et aquilo vel septentrio septentrionalis, collaterales sunt vulturnus ab oriente brumali, caecias ab ortu aestivo, Africus vel libonotus ab ocasu brumali, corus caurus ab ocasu aestivo. Hoi animoi Kyriotatoe sin apeliotes, notos, stepiros, boreas. Hoi pleuroten euros apo Anatoles Kemerines pne, caecias apo Anatoles terines, lips apo Kemerines duseos, argestes esciron apo terines duseos. And the winds, of course, belong to any study of ta meteora, and we see pictured to the right the Tower of the Winds in the Roman Agora at Athens, built roughly between 150 and 50 BCE, that is, after the Romans had conquered Greece. Atop, it had a Triton figure, now lost, that functioned as a weather vane. In the interior, a water clock, klepsydra in the Greek, and on the frieze, a depiction of the 8 wind deities, and beneath each a sundial, making, in effect, an 8-wind compass rose. As shown by their placement on compass roses, also known as wind roses, winds for centuries had names and were used for both navigational purposes because of their directional nature and meteorological purposes because of their association with weather patterns. It seems the early Greeks did use winds for meteorological purposes, for example, to determine optimal planting times, but used astral phenomena such as constellations for navigation. And by the time of Homer and Hesiod, the winds were personified and part of mythology. Aristotle, in his Meteorologica, superimposed the winds on a diagram, in effect a compass rose, of the cardinal and ordinal directions, which he specified in terms of helical risings and settings. Later geographers, such as Timotheus of Rhodes, associated the winds with actual geographical locations and peoples, and thus began treating the winds as genuine points of geographic direction. The Greeks after Aristotle and later Roman writers such as Seneca and Pliny alternated between 8-wind and 12-wind systems. The Tower of the Winds at Athens was, for example, an 8-wind system. So let's have a look. As we said, Aristotle mapped the winds to what we call the cardinal and ordinal directions, which he specified in terms of helical risings and settings. So let's first look at the Greek and Latin names for the cardinal and ordinal directions. The cardinal directions are east, Anatole Isemerine, Latin ortus equinoctialis, the point on the horizon where the sun rises on the equinox. By the way, where does our name East come from? In the early Middle Ages, the Emperor Charlemagne, according to his biographer Einhard, writing in Latin, gave Frankish names to the winds. This is where our directional names come from. Nordrone, north, Sundrone, south, Ostronevint, east, Westrone, west. And west in Greek, Dusis edusme Isemerine, Latin ocasus equinoctialis, the point on the horizon where the sun sets on the equinox. North, Arctos, the bear, Latin septentrio, the septentriones, think Ursa Minor, the Little Dipper, Polaris. South, Mesembria, Latin meridies, midday. And the ordinal directions, beginning with the northeast, Anatole Terine, Latin ortus aestivus vel solstitialis, the point on the horizon where the sun rises on the summer solstice. Southwest, Dusis Kemerine, ocasus hibernus vel brumalis, the point on the horizon where the sun sets on the winter solstice. and a reminder that solstitia for the Romans referred to the summer solstice. They usually used brumalis for the winter solstice. Southeast, Anatolae Cemerinae, Latin Ortus Brumalis, the point on the horizon where the sun rises on the winter solstice. In northwest, Ducis Terinae, Occasus Aestivus, well solstitialis, the point on the horizon where the sun sets on the summer solstice. And now for the winds. In Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, there is at least a two-wind system, Boreas, identified as the wind of the north, and Notos, identified as the wind of the south. Additionally, Homer names two other winds, Stepyros and Euros, as you can see in the passage from the Odyssey where Poseidon marshals the four winds against Odysseus. Sun Dauros te notos tepeson Stepyros te Dusais kai borees aetregenetes megacuma culindon. Elsewhere, Homer also alludes to two winds that some scholars think may be Argestes and Apeliotes. The exact locations of Stepyros and Euros and Argestes and Apeliotes in Homer's texts are unclear. In Hesiod's Theogony, the winds are the mythological children of Astraios and Dawn. Astraioi de os animus teca cartiro tumus, Argestens depuron borein typsero keleuton kai noton, en piloteti te a te oi elnetesa. Resuming with Aristotle, Aristotle then plots the winds on his compass rose, beginning with Apeliotes from the equinoctial rising, and diametrically opposite Stepyros from the equinoctial setting, then Apartias or Boreas from the bear, and diametrically opposite Notos from the midday Mesembria. The collateral winds beginning with Kaikias from the summer solstitial rising, and diametrically opposite Leaps from the winter solstitial setting. Euros from the winter solstitial rising and diametrically opposite Argestes from the summer solstitial setting. Argestes was also called Olympia, and in Attica was called Skiron because it was felt to blow from the Skironian rocks in the Isthmus of Corinth. So far, this gives us an 8-wind system. To these 8 winds, Aristotle added 2 winds at the setting and rising ends of the Arctic Circle, which circle he calls ho diapantos painomenos kyklos, the circle the constellations above which are seen all year round. These winds he calls traskias and messes. For what might be diametrically opposite these two, Aristotle only says that opposite traskias to the south-southeast was apparently a wind the locals called Poinikias, which is, of course, Phoenicia. He mentions nothing for south-southwest. So this then leaves Aristotle as a 10-wind system. Several generations after Aristotle, Timotheus of Rhodes turned this into a 12-wind system, supplying a south-south wind, Libonotos, and also gave the alternative name Kirkios for Traskias. To get the Latin names for these winds, let's superimpose the names from the Roman author Seneca's 12-wind system, beginning with Subsolanus, Favonius, the variant from Greek Stepyros, Septentrio, Auster, Greek variant Notus, Aquilo, Libonotus, Kaikias from the Greek, Africus, Vulturnus, Greek variant Eurus, Chorus, Greek variant Argestes, Euronotus, the same as the Greek, and Traskias, also known as Kirkius. One of our sources for mapping Latin names to Greek names for the winds is this Roman anemoscope from the 2nd or 3rd century of the Common Era that describes the names of the 12 classical winds in Latin and Greek. Let us circle back to Comenius's 8-wind system and see if it now makes more sense. Venti cardinales sunt subsolanus, orientalis, auster, meridionalis, favonius, sive zephyrus, occidentalis, et aquilo vel septentrio, septentrionalis. Collaterales sunt vulturnus ab oriente brumale, caecias ab ortu aestivo, Africus vel libonotus ab ocasu brumale, chorus ab ocasu aestivo. Hoi anemoi kyriotatoi sin apeliotes, notos, sdepiros, boreas, hoi pleuroten euros apo anatoles kemerines pne, caecias apo anatoles terines, lips apo kemerines duseos, argestes eschiron apo terines duseos. To round out the picture, let's look at how these winds were named in the Middle Ages and beyond. The classical names for the winds probably continued to be taught for many centuries in school, but they were gradually replaced among working sailors in the Mediterranean by a strange mixture of Romance language-ish and Arabic-ish names. For example, Sirocco from Al-Sharq, Garbino from Algarb, and Mistral from the Provençal Mistral, and ultimately from the Latin Magistralis, that is Magistralis Ventus, the master wind. Circius et turbo in girum se mirificae circumagunt. Strobilos cae tupos taumasios dianemu sustropen metuetu tucletae. Exhalationes sulpurae incensae edunt fulgura vel fulgetra et casmata. Hae apopnoae teodes plogistesae astrapaste cae casmata apergasduntae. Fulgur is a lightning flash. Fulgetrum is heat lightning, that is lightning without thunder. Casmata, Aristotle in Ta Meteorologica and Seneca in his Naturales Quaestiones mention these chasms along with, for example, trenches, bothunoi, and blood-red colors, haematode chromata, as colorful phenomena visible in the night sky due to combustions in the upper atmosphere. Et tum calores cum frigore pugna tonitrua ciet cum fragore terribili. Totegar totermon polemion on puse toi psychroi brontas sindupoi poberotatoi poie. Emicans inde flamma fulmen nuncupatur. Plox ectonepon ex ana duomene cae ecragesa ceraunos legitae. Quod sive fit urens, sive discutiens, momento se dissipat, et quicquid eo icetur corruit. Hutos de ecausteros e diaporeticos et lasticos on, en acare diascorpiste hapanta hois impipte. Cum fulgerat, fulminat, quis non atonatus pauescat, hote de astrapte ceraunoe, tis uc imbrontetos e imbebrontemenos hyper orode tutu. And indeed, this condition is known as astrophobia or astropophobia or brontophobia or keratophobia or tonitrophobia. The Romans had quite a few words for lightning from the root ful. Here's a review. Heat lightning, lightning without accompanying thunder, fulgitrum, with alternative forms in the neuter plural fulgitrua and a feminine form fulgitra, fulgitrae. Flash of lightning seen in the sky, variants fulgor, fulgoris, fulgur, fulguris, fulguratio, fulgurationis, Greek astrape, asterope, sterope. Zeus's lightning stroke or thunderbolt that descends to earth and strikes terrestrial objects, fulmen, Greek keranos. Thunder is tonitrus, Greek bronte. Tonitrus has alternative forms neuter plural tonitrua and a nominative singular tonitru. Fragor, fragoris is a crashing noise. And in fact, let's not leave thunder and lightning without acknowledging the huge role augury played in Roman public life, and in that context, the religious significance lightning had for the Romans. Just to mention some miscellaneous facts, one of Jupiter's epithets was Jupiter fulgurator, and one of the important sources the Romans used in developing their craft of divination was the Etruscan book Libri Fulgurales. Livy's monumental history of Rome ab urbe condita is an annalistic history, that is, it narrates Rome's history year by year, and often to start his coverage of a new year, Livy listed the important portents and prodigies that affected public policy decisions that year. They often included lightning events. Cometes nullus umquam fulsit, quin sterilitatem in urere terris aut infectionem. Cometes udes popota estrapsen, home loemon e limon tege cat eninken. Comenius here follows an old belief that associated comets with infection and sterility on Earth. To the contrary, panspermia is a modern scientific hypothesis that comets and asteroids supplied Earth with life-building molecules. In another modern hypothesis under study, the impact of comets may have supplied the energy to create simple molecules that are precursors to life. And the names of the comet-exploring Rosetta and Philae space vehicles should be of interest to you as a student of ancient Greek. The Rosetta Stone and the Philae obelisk, from which these spacecraft get their names, are inscriptions from the Ptolemaic era, or have inscriptions from the Ptolemaic era in Egypt, that contain both Greek and Egyptian text and permitted Jean-François Champollion to decipher Egyptian hieroglyphics in 1822. Iris matutina ut et halos nubilosam, vespertina serenam tempestatem id est sudum nuntiat. Iris cae halos heotenemen aera synepe e nepelode hesperinede aetrian prosemine. Orbis pictus, aura, aer. Aura spirat leneter. Ventus flat valide. Procella sternit arbores. He aura pne praos. ho animos iscuros. He kataigis, he lailaps, ho tupos, katabale ta dendra. Turbo in gyrum se aget, ho strobilos cycletae. Ventus subterraneus, aut quaecunque sit alia causa, terrae motum facet, excitat, terrae motus ruinas operatur. Pneuma hypogeon, etis an hetera aetia, sesmon poe egere, ho sesmos casmata apergazdatae. And here we see to the left a devastating example of the earth shaker Poseidon having struck ho enosikton or ho enosigaios Poseidon, as he's called in Homer. In Roman mythology, the god Vulcanus caused earthquakes working from his underground forge. Today we have a better, though still not perfect, understanding of the causes of earthquakes.